it's even better. But we got a good crew of people who are in listening today. This is going to be a fun one for us today. So we have, just kind of give you all an insight about what we do here. This is our franchise interview series we've been running for the last handful of months now. This is our interview number 5, and it's an opportunity for you all to hear from one of our franchisees and to hear their story. And it's also a great platform for us to allow a franchisee to talk about themselves, because these individuals work hard and they deserve that platform to be able to tell their story and tell their, how they got here, how they evaluated the brand, how is the support system, one of the things that the franchisor is responsible for is they should be providing support. And when you're evaluating a franchise, you should make sure the franchisor provides support, programs, procedures, and that's really what they're there for. So today we have our franchisee of the year. So everybody, I'll give me Chris. She's in Cincinnati, Ohio. And Chris, why don't you go ahead and give a little bit of your bio, and we just start from there, and then we'll just I'll take notes while we're talking, and we'll just make this a really great conversation. Again, everybody, we will have a chance for a question and answer at the end of the conversation. So don't hesitate. If you have a question, write it into the chat box so you don't forget about it. You don't have to, wait to the end. Just keep writing it in, and we're going to make sure that we address almost every question that you can possibly have. So Chris, tell me about it.
Oh, gosh. All right. So I am a nurse. I've been a nurse for 33 years. Way back in 2006, prior to that, I was working in a hospital system. I was a manager of a cardiac cath lab and special procedures, and I had staff underneath me, and it's just tough being in a world like that when you had employees that weren't really doing their job, and just difficulties of trying to not have those people work for you anymore really challenged me as an individual, and it was a very frustrating thing. My dad was working in Toledo, and at that time he worked in the steel industry, and it was kind of collapsing in on itself. He had lost basically his job, his retirement and everything. And I called him up and I said, Dad, do you want to move home and start a business? And he's like, yep, I'll do that. So we started researching, like probably some of you guys, and literally, I don't know if you know this, Daniel, but I almost bought a Nathan's hot dog franchise.
Oh my goodness. Basically the same thing.
Because I was just burned out at the time of being a nurse. At least that's what I thought. Mm-hmm. We started looking into it, and I'm like, I don't know. I don't know if that's the right fit. My dad and I talked about it, and still working as a nurse. I was working on a Friday night. It was pouring down rain. And of course, we were short staffed. So I ended up having to be a nurse, an actual nurse instead of a manager. And the little 85-year-old gentleman was just crying his little eyes out, and his little wife sitting next to him. And I'm like, what's wrong? And he said, they're telling me I have to spend the night. My wife has dementia, and she's never been home alone, and I don't want her to go home alone. And I'm like, oh God, well, she's not going to be able to stay at the hospital. I mean, that's probably not ideal. He says she needs to go home. And I said, well, where does she live? And she happened to live in the neighborhood right next to where I lived. So I said, I can take her home and I can make sure she's safe, but that's really all I can do for you. And he said, would I do that? And I said, absolutely. And this lady was just the sweetest thing. But I took her home, and she was terrified. She had me check all the doors, all the windows, look under the beds. And I assured her, she was safe and that her husband would call her. We called him, and they sort of reconnected. And I left out of there, and I felt sick. I'm like, I don't know if I should be leaving her. I said, there has to be, isn't there some? So I went home and I started looking to see, was there somebody that could help this lady? But this is, mind you, 2006. So home care was pretty darn new at that time, and there wasn't a lot of them. And I had never heard of the concept, and I'd worked in a hospital for a long time. So I started like doing my research, and I was up to like 4 a.m, just sort of looking at franchises, and kind of moved away from I'd been talking to a broker, and I mean, we were in pretty far with doing something different. And wow, this is a way better fit for me. It's not medical. I didn't have to be a nurse. You don't have to be a nurse to do this. You have to have compassion, and you have to want to care for people. And that's more of what I wanted. You know, I wanted to really help people, and I wanted to make a difference with what I chose to do for work, if you will. And that kind of became my hunt. And I kind of, like probably some of you guys, but started looking at territories and looking around to see what franchises were out there and what were available. And I started calling around and doing my homework. And I know my city pretty well, where there's money. I understood at that point that this is pretty much private pay. People have to have money to be able to be able to afford our services. So I found HomeWell. My territory, fortunately, was open. And that basically started the process, and I said, yep. My dad said, absolutely. He sold his home in Toledo, moved in with me. And my mom too, obviously came with us, but yeah, we started with Josh Hoffman, who's the founder. At that time, it was called HomeWell Senior Care, not HomeWell Care Services, but we evolved. We went through the process, went through our training, which from what I understand is vastly different now, which all I can say with HomeWell right now is everything that's kind of transpired over the years, it's been nothing but improvement after improvement after improvement. It's been a great organization to work with and to grow with. So that being said, I loved it. But we started our business, and I'm a very, I'm going to say a conservative person. I still kept my hospital job. And so I was working 2 days a week. I got rid of my management position and took another job as just a staff nurse, because I didn't know if this was going to work. And I kept my job and started a business. And my dad and I opened up shop. We had a little 2-room, not much bigger than the room. I have 2 rooms about the size I'm in right now, which is not big. And we grew from there. We started hiring people, and I made connections. And my advice to anybody starting a franchise is know who your connections are. And it could be somebody you had no idea would be a connection. But I made friends with a lady in the lunch line working at my kids' cafeteria school, and she happened to be a wellness nurse at a big retirement community. My first client. And a long relationship ever since, to be honest with you. And it was amazing. But, and hockey families, my kids played a lot of hockey, and I made connections with people that I had no idea doing the kind of work that could help me grow a business. So you have to kind of think outside the box. But I worked hard for, I think it's different now when you guys are going to start a franchise. I don't really know all of the protocols or what they are asking of you, but I pretty much rolled up my sleeves and I hired people. And as I got clients, I would put staff in, but by no means, if I had a client that needed care and we didn't have a caregiver for that shift, I would do it. And I've done it for 16 years, not a lot, especially not lately, but I had to go do a shift at midnight. But this is me. I did a shift at midnight to 2 a.m. until a caregiver could get there, because when you're taking care of somebody that needs your care 24 hours a day, this is an industry that relies on you, and they need to be able to depend on your business. So that's kind of what it was. And we just sort of grew from a 2-room office to 4 rooms to 6 rooms, and employees. And my dad and I worked well together. My dad was a business person. He did all the books and the money and the finance stuff. And I was the care manager and the caregiver, and I did the orientation and the training. And if I had to be a caregiver, I did that. But that's kind of my start. We went from the bus to fast forward many years, and we're in our like 7th location now, just because we've grown so much over the years. We have about 120 caregivers. I have 7 office staff that work here with me that are fantastic.
That's awesome.
Fabulous. So what else can I tell you?
No, that's awesome. And so part of this is like you have some of the deeper of all the interviews we've done to date, you have the longest tenure at HomeWell.
Yeah.
And I think what I would love to hear from you specifically is 2 different things.
Yeah.
I guess 3, I'll call it 3. How did you, during your, because there are certain things that don't change in business, and part of it's how you evaluate a business. So during your evaluation, you looked at other companies that are out there, and what made you want to, what made you comfortable with HomeWell during your evaluation that said, hey, listen, I want to come on board. Through the years, how has that relationship with HomeWell changed, and how is that, has more value been added, or is it still the same, or do you see a completely different structure because you've been through both entities? And then lastly, the industry itself, it's how is that changing overall, and what have you seen through that? So I think those are the kind of 3 questions from your vast wealth of knowledge.
Okay, well, so when I was doing my vetting, if you will, of how to pick HomeWell, again, I'm an emotional person. I needed to feel a connection with people. So with HomeWell at that time, and I'm definitely going to say even past that and onward into today, it's a very personal connection with the corporate people of HomeWell. They were easy to talk to, they were easy to get a hold of, and that was important. I didn't want to, some of the other franchises like Comfort Keepers, Home Instead, Right at Home, those are places I called, talk to. I didn't feel like my value was the same as what they were doing. I felt like they were selling a company, and I wanted to be part of something bigger than just a company that with a name on it. So it was just a personal connection that has been there, still there, and that's kind of why I picked HomeWell. And it had my territory. And I'm going to be honest with people out there: know your territory and make sure that that's where you're going to have folks that have money to afford. Or, things have changed, and what I see now, a lot of things are the same. People need help. You're going to be dealing with families that need help, and never are you ever going to have a family that everybody's on the same page. So you have to have somebody in your organization when you go out and meet with a family that's really able to connect and kind of pull people together. Because if you have 5 family members and they all have a different idea of what mom or dad should be doing, you need to help find a common ground for all of them. And that hasn't changed, but things that have changed have been caregivers. Sometimes you have an abundance of them. Sometimes you have very little of them. And that's a hard piece of this job, finding enough caregivers to take care of the need. And I will tell you that the need is great and vast. And I don't care if there's 250 home care agencies where we live, there's not enough. The need is so, so great right now. And it's only getting greater, especially with COVID. And I'm probably jumping all around. This is why I hate doing public speaking.
Stop, you're doing great.
But, COVID has kind of forced us to become a little bit more procedural in nature and a little bit more process oriented. I ran this business and tweaked it to as families needed, but, I would change care plans and make things for a family so that they would be happy. But now I want them to be happy, but I need them to be safe. I need my caregivers to be safe. And that's hard, because you'll have people out there that don't want to wear a mask and don't want to do the things they did. And I ended up getting COVID because of that situation. And I'll just tell you my little story. I went to do an assessment with a little family. It was like Dallas. So I live out in the country where I live, but most of our business is in Cincinnati, but we have a population that's rural. And I walked into this home, double doors, marble floors, dueling staircases, and 7 boys taking care of their mama. 7 boys, and not one of them would wear a mask when I was talking to them. I had my mask on. Mom actually had COVID 2 weeks before, so she was done with COVID. But I just sort of looked around that household and I was like, I'm going to probably get COVID even though I'm wearing a mask. And I asked them to wear a mask. They didn't have masks. And you have to decide what's right for you guys. And that was not a good fit for my business, because it's important that my caregivers are safe. You have to be strong enough to walk away from potential income if they're not going to listen to the safety rules. And that's been a huge, I mean, I would do anything for anybody, but this has changed my way of thinking.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it must go a long way. Your employees and your caregivers must see you do that and hear those words from you. And that must mean it a long way, go a long way. And which kind of brings me to my next question regarding just kind of HR piece of it is, what are some of the strategies over the last 16 years that you have 120 caregivers. That's awesome.
Yeah.
And I know that you have good relationships with those caregivers. So what are some of the strategies you've done to become employer of choice or become that person that they don't want to leave, they want to stay by?
And we've had I've had employees that have worked for me for 12 and 13 years. I probably have over half of them have worked for me for over 5 years. We're like family here. We care about our employees. Most of my employees actually come from other employees. Word of mouth is my biggest referral source, and staffing my agency. Obviously we use Indeed and I use Facebook and things like that. Indeed's been good for us, but getting to really know a potential employee is key, and it's very vital to when you hire somebody. Just because you need somebody and they happen to live in that neighborhood where you're trying to service doesn't mean they're the right person for you. So we really take the time to get to know our employees when we're interviewing them. When I first started, I would interview people and my interviews would be 15 minutes. And those caregivers would last
15 minutes.
Days, 3 months, they wouldn't show up. Once we started realizing, you need to build a relationship with your caregivers. And so Dwayne, who's my husband, he took over that hiring role like 6 years ago. And it's like we've doubled our staff because of him. He's so interested in getting to know them and why they want to work for us. And they want to work for us because they see we take an interest in them. It's not just wherever you work, but tell us more about your life and your interest. And we try to build relationships because they're not coming into an office every day. These people are going all over the city, but it's important to know that their grandma's in the hospital, or they just had their 3rd child, or whatever it is. You need to know your employees and take the time to know your employees, because they stay with you when they realize that you care about them. And we do really care about our employees. We've helped families that have, lost things in fires. We've bought strollers for people. I don't want it to sound cliche, but it is family to us. And that's how I treat our employees and our office staff. They are our family. If they can't, meet their electric bill and they're going to lose their electric, we're going to give them some money before their paycheck. But that's us. Our business has thrived because I think our caregivers care about us. They know we care about them, and they care about our clients. But on the flip side of that, I don't have the biggest agency out there. I don't want that. That's my work-life balance. I don't want to be the largest home care agency in town. I want to be the best, and I want to have the best caregivers.
I mean, this may sound naive in saying so, but there has to be some sort of trickle down if you're showing that compassion and love to and treating your customers like family, I
Mhm.
mean your caregivers like family, then your patient, the people they're working with must transition through. There has to be a through line to how they're treating their patients because of how you're treating them. There has to be a through line. So I mean, maybe I'm naive, but I mean, unless you want to comment on that.
No, it definitely kind of flows through because, just when we have them in here and we orient them, that friendship doesn't stop at the door when they walk out. Our care managers become deeply involved with our caregivers. We're out there every day in the field. So there's management seeing them. And I think caregivers really love to see that. They really like knowing that they're not just floating out there alone. And I still go out and see all of our caregivers and all of our clients just randomly. I do a lot of quality spot checking, make sure they're happy. There's no reason for me to be there. It's because I want to be there.
Mhm.
I think our caregivers like that. I think it's something that we bring different to maybe what some other companies do, but that's also because the volume is, manageable for me to do that.
Yeah. And it gives you, I mean, I think that's great because now you have faith in your team to run your organization. For those of you who weren't earlier, Chris, can you just tell me what you're doing for 72 days here? Sure.
So we're going to Australia. We're leaving February 10th and we'll be gone for 71 days. So owning a business has been one of those things. I was a staff nurse in a hospital and couldn't be gone for 71 days or I'd lose my job. But this has the flexibility and my lifestyle has been definitely impacted by this. I had 3 kids. 2 of them played travel hockey all over the United States. And from day one, I never missed a game, a sporting event. I would be able to go with them. HomeWell, their platform, it's all I need is this little baby right here. And I can run my business from it if I have to. And the lifestyle it's afforded me having my own business has been amazing. It's made me a good income, but it's provided me flexibility. And at the end of the day, it's brought me joy. Because it's a feel good job. I know that I've helped somebody every day or a family member.
That's brilliant.
Mhm.
Let me go into your opening and what you've done through the years. Can you talk a little bit about some of the habits that you formed or some of the things that you think are the most important aspects of like every day for you?
I don't know if
And
it's
you're obviously super fact that these are the things I need.
so. I wrote a few things down because I do think that this is important and it's stuff that my dad taught me over the years. My dad, by the way, he passed away in 2018, retired a few years prior to that. But, every day, you should start your day with a purpose. When you're owning your own business, it's very blurry lines. You're not being held accountable to anybody but yourself. And when I was not accountable to myself and I let it get lax, never failed. The business got a little slower that next week because I didn't have a plan.
Mm-hmm.
I get up and I make a plan. Every week I start with a plan, and each morning I kind of go over my daily plan. What do I need to accomplish today? And if there's really nothing, I find something to accomplish, at least one task. I mean, I've been doing my business for so long, I really don't run my day-to-day business anymore. I don't do the scheduling. I don't do the care managing. I don't do the assessments, but I'm working on how to grow my business. And so that's more of a strategic thing that evolves over time.
Mm-hmm.
But having a vision when I wanted to, why did I want to start a business is important. Yes, you're going to make money, but that really shouldn't be why you're starting this business. This business is you're really taking care of people and you're making an impact on their lives and you're allowing them to stay home and give some families peace of mind. So I just, I'm intentional. I start my day, with a plan. I surround myself with people that are stronger than I am in areas that I'm weak. My organization is, but I have people around me that are very organized that keep me on task. So I just encourage you when you're hiring people, hire people where you're weak. Hire strong people that are going to be really good at the areas that you're weak, because that will help you. When your team is strong around you, it makes a huge difference. Hire slowly, fire quickly. Listen and think before you actually talk. I mean, you're going to do a lot, and that's hard for me because I'm pretty chatty, but when you're talking to families, or when you're talking to an employee that's unhappy, or a family member that's unhappy, listen to what they have to say before you start talking, and think about what you're going to say before you start talking. Those were like important life lessons for me to learn. And just have a healthy outlet, because I don't think I would have been successful without healthy ways to relieve stress. Exercise is important to me, and having things like golf that are important to me, that I can kind of forget about work for a little bit, because it can consume you. But that's when you're a business owner, that happens. I mean, it becomes part of you, but you still have to kind of hold on to yourself. It's important to have a healthy work-life balance, and when it's stressful, vent to the people that you've got surrounding you to help you.
Absolutely. And now, to kind of get into your business, how is business going for you?
Business is fantastic. We've had our best year ever. Hiring's been pretty good. We are, we're doing about 2,600 hours a week in billing. When I first started, we were doing 50, 100. We cheered, and 700 was great, and 1,000 was good, and we just slowly keep marching up our little ladder, like where we want to be. But some of our franchisors out there, they're much bigger than me. But our business makes a lot of money and it's manageable. So I think you can have a good work-life balance and make a lot of money and have plenty of hours, but it really depends on the individual, like what you're going for. My counterpart in Columbus, I work really well with them. They're a couple hours away. They do probably double what I do, but they're business people like that. The man that owns that is he's a business guy. And I'm a nurse, so that philosophy is a little different for us, but both of us are successful in our own way. I feel really good when I walk out of my door every day.
That's awesome.
I sleep good at night.
That's the most important thing, right? That's the one thing I always tell.
Yeah. And everybody's going to have a different reason why they're getting into this business. If it's to make money, great. If it's to help people, that's even better in my mind, but that's me.
Yeah. You bring up a good point that I always like to touch about, because I've been in franchising for a lot of years and worked with a lot of different companies, and you see different things across every franchisor. And one of the things that I find fascinating about HomeWell, and I would love for you to expand upon it a little bit, is the relationship between the franchisees. And can you talk to me a little bit about that for you, and how that plays into how you feel overall about the company and how your growth happens, and how is your relationship with the franchise system?
The franchise system is great, and they encourage collaboration, because owning companies like this, it's so good to be able to talk to peers that are doing the same thing. And when you run up against a problem, all you have to do is pick up the phone and call one of your other peers and say, hey, have you dealt with this? And if they haven't, they'll say, oh, I'll try so-and-so. I think he could help you. And the franchise organization, they're fantastic. They're nothing but supportive. The platforms and the programs that they put in place have really helped us grow as an organization. But working with the other franchisees is invaluable to me. And I take phone calls all the time from other franchise owners because I'm a nurse. So I have a different sort of aspect. They're like, what about taking care of somebody with a feeding tube? They will call me and say, what do you think about it? And we kind of talk through that. Everybody's going to have their own answer. But, you know, when I call about HR issues, I might call Ray Black in Columbus, or how to get into a hospital system because I'm having trouble. I'd call Lou up in New Jersey. The franchisees are great. I mean, the organization itself, and they'll put you in touch with people if you don't know who to call. But I've in the beginning, I always started with the organization because they were my lifeline. I mean, in the beginning, I'd call my liaison person, you know, a couple times a week, because I would, as you're starting, you're just feeling your way through it. But the support is there. You just have to ask for it.
Yeah. Now you can just call and text and bother Brandon.
Yeah, pretty much.
That's what I do too. It makes you feel any
better. There you go. Right.
Well, Chris, listen, I can't.
I'm smiling by the way too, so it's
I really love this interview. I think for someone who claims they don't like the public speak, and for someone who claims they don't like to talk about themselves, I think you are, a fibber, because you do a wonderful job at it. You did a great job. I want to open up here, guys, to all the attendees. I'm going to open up here for a couple of questions, and so please start thinking about some of the questions. Type them in. I see there's already a couple out there. Brandy, is there anything before we jump in? I have one last question for Chris, but do you have anything before I ask the last question?
No, I wanted to chime in a little bit, and then I was going to get into questions because there are a few that came in, and just like first, like say thank you, Chris. I know you're busy, and but I know that being part of a franchise system is important to you, and I appreciate that. As much of a, and you're also very humble, and maybe on some one-off calls, people can ask you a little bit deeper questions about your business, because you should be very, very, I mean, anyone who can, the most businesses fail within the first 2 years, right? Across the board, right? And you've been in business for 16 years. So that period, put a pat yourself on the back, but you're very humble in terms of your revenue too. You have a really, really strong business, and so
thank you.
But there was a couple of questions coming in, Dan. I don't know if you want to address them, or do you want me to go them? I mean, they're very simple. The first one was just kind of how many customers are you handling those 120 caregivers? I guess they're kind of looking for like a caregiver to client type ratio. And
yep, it varies about 65 to 85 at a time. Some of them kind of come and go, or we do every other week. So I would say on the average, maybe 70.
Mm-hmm. About 70 clients. Yep. And then you remember like your biggest struggles, like kind of what the biggest, the hardest, hurdles you had to jump over when you first opened? I know it's been a little while, but like I know everyone's learning curve's a little bit different, but what was like the biggest lesson you learned in the first year or so?
Gosh. Not getting disappointed when people kind of blow you off in the beginning, starting, they didn't know me, I didn't know them, and just having that courage to kind of keep knocking on their door and asking them to get, we are using such and such agency. I said, that's fine. But if you want to use me as a backup, I would love to prove to you what we can do. That was a huge hurdle for me because, again, I was the salesperson, but I'm a nurse and I don't like public speaking. So that was hard for me to learn to sell. And then once I realized you're not selling something, you're talking to people and you're helping them with problems, and you're offering them a solution to a problem they may have. It could be a family, it could be a facility, it could be a rehab place. But once you realize and you kind of get past, I got to get out there and sell, and because that's what I was knocking on the doors and doing my visits, and I'm like, no, it's you have to build relationships with people. That takes time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then now you found a pretty strong niche in that facility work, right? Do you want to talk a little bit about that model and kind of like how you go about that, just a little bit for people who might be interested in learning about that?
Sure. So, I mean, I will tell you that the pendulum is swinging. Again, over the years, our pendulum's sort of gone back and forth. For 8 years, we were partnered with a long-term care, continuum of care community. So we were their only non-medical private duty and a campus, I'm going to say, that took care of about 600 residents. And I formed a partnership with them, and we basically went into their independent apartments and cottages, and we provided services in real small increments of time. Now, long story, you have to adjust your prices around that, but we would basically take care of 10 to 12 people a day with 1 or 2 caregivers. And that relationship was beautiful. We still had it, but we sort of parted ways. And that was a financial investment for me and them. I've learned you can do that same thing without being financially vested. So I've gone to a different community where I provide the same service, but they're not in partnership with me financially. So I'm the one getting all the profit for that, which is good. But right now we are in a place called Twin Lakes, where they're preferred provider. Again, it's a large CCRC, or continuum of care community. They've got, independent cottages, independent apartments, assisted living, memory care, skilled nursing. And we're their go-to person, which that's going back, to the lunch lady many years ago, who doesn't even work there anymore, that I met. But, it's about trust and being very responsive. I can't emphasize that enough. When there's a problem, do not, for anybody, bury your head in the sand. Head on, get in there, apologize for whatever happened, and fix it right away. But we do like 26 residents, going back to where we're at now. 26 residents. I have 2 full-time people that work 12 hours a day, that split those people up. And those little short shifts eventually evolve into 24-hour care cases. So we do large volume of that inside there, and anywhere from 15 minutes up to 2 hours increments. We see different residents, helping them get dressed, just doing a med reminder, helping somebody in the shower, just a companion. It just sort of depends. I don't talk to anybody about that. It's my passion. I find it.
We froze up.
Looks like she froze. She was just getting rolling too.
I know.
Chris, are you still there? Can you hear us? Oh, she might be, the internet might have kicked her off.
Yeah.
Hang on.
Oh,
Here,
All right.
there you are. You're
I
fine.
can see you, but here.
All right, we can hear you now. So if we're getting close to the end. There are a few other, but that's an interesting model, and I thought it was good for people to hear, because I love it. And we've seen a lot of our franchisees, once they kind of hit that like 6-month, 8-month period. I mean, the key is you have to know how to staff to be able to
But
go.
what I'm seeing with COVID now is everybody's moving them into their homes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
So we're doing more out.
there's a few other questions that we can kind of go through real quick. So one is about your mix of private pay, Medicaid, third-party payer sources. Like what's your mix in that regards?
My mix is, we are 100% private pay. We do absolutely nothing but private pay, and we assist people with long-term care. We do not do any third-party billing. We bill the client directly. The client pays us.
Okay, awesome. And do you remember how long it took to kind of get your initial investment back?
Probably after about 2 years, 3 years, the whole investment. And I mean, maybe a little bit sooner, probably a little. My investment is probably different than their investment. So.
Yeah, but and so like obviously it's like 2 different things that people are talking about that. So it's like break even month to month to when you get to stop taking money out of your pocket and then recoup your whole entire initial investment. Yeah. So do you want to?
I kind of build it on hours for us, like to be able to pay our rent, and once we sort of hit 200 to 300 hours, we were making money.
Yeah, so that's like your month to month break even around 300 hours, but then to recoup your whole entire investment took about another year or 2.
Yeah, exactly. Something like that.
That makes sense. All right. And then do you remember how long it took before you got your first client? That was a long time ago. But
I know. It took about 2 months. 2 months. It did take some time. But,
Yeah.
That's okay.
Sure. And yeah, of course, now today we're seeing franchisees get those clients a lot faster because we've learned from our
Yeah.
pioneers, which you were one of them. So we appreciate
Yeah.
that. Takes a
Learn
lot of
from
guts to be franchisee number 5. Were you number 5 or 6 or something like that? Like, yeah.
I think it was Lou Romano, Alaska, and then us.
Whoa.
Okay. So there you go. It takes a lot of guts to be one of the first 3.
Whoa, pioneer. Yeah.
Yeah. And there were some people in Canada. Sorry. So I kind of forget about our Canadian friends.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah,
So
but no, it's a great.
Dana, do you have any other additional questions or?
Yeah, I think one of the last questions that I would really, and thank you all for all your awesome questions, guys. I think you've done such a great job of answering and being so forthright with all your answers. For me, I think the one thing I'd always like to just kind of finish off with and close out is, 16 years in, right? You've created something, you've been happy about it. If you were to go back to that, so if I were to snap my fingers and I were to put you into 2006 and you knew what you knew now, do you do it again?
100%. And then I'd encourage people to do it. Yeah, it's a great industry, guys, and it's not going away for sure. And you have options when you get into this. I have the potential for legacy for my children if they want to do this. I have the potential to hire somebody and be off site and not be involved day to day, retire, whatever, it's, I wouldn't change it for the world. I really would not change it. I love it. And I love all my clients. I love what I've been able to accomplish and the friendships I've made and the families we've taken care of and helped been so important to me as a person.
Yeah. Brilliant. Well, thank you so much, Chris.
You're
I will be packing my bags and meeting you in Cincinnati for our flight to Australia. I'm invited, right?
Perfect. Yeah, you just have to quarantine for 2 weeks in a hotel. Hope you don't mind. Dwayne snores.
I'll never mind. No joke. All right, guys.
All right,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you all for joining. Thank you for your wonderful questions. And we will all be in touch. And thank you, guys.
Thank you. Bye.